Okay, so last session, what I've tried to do through the last 2 days is tell a story, and that story is about the importance of how we understand dementia, how we meet the needs of people with dementia, how we need to be organised to produce a system-wide response to dementia. And this final session is about how then we measure what we're doing. How do we know what we're doing is any good? So what I'm going to do is, in this session, look at measuring outcomes within a service system for people briefly, and then I'm going to introduce you to a quality outcome measure that we developed a couple of years ago where I work, and then I'm going to give you a chance to try it. So I'm going to show you a bit of a DVD, and so you're going to do the work this afternoon rather than me. Okay, so here we go. So just again, put it in context, we know that there has been, over the 20 years that I've been working in this field, there's been increasing development of some assessment tools to look at the diagnosis of dementia and also to follow what happens as the disease progresses, so you know where people are. We've got some tools that have been adapted to look at very specialist areas. So for example, there are tools that look at carer burden, and there are tools that look at behaviour. And the joint guidance, which I've talked to you about before, gives lots of recommendations, really good practice. Some services in the UK are using generic outcome tools, so things like HONOS LD, which is Health of the Nation outcome scales, but they're not very sensitive to change anyway, and they're certainly not very sensitive to change in people who develop dementia. And when we started to look at what we could use to actually look at measuring outcomes, we couldn't find anything in the UK at all that actually let us measure what we're doing for people with a learning disability and intellectual disability. So we set ourselves some questions. So first of all, if you want to measure an outcome, you need to know what are the standards that you're trying to achieve. So what is it that you're actually measuring yourself on? And then, how do we know what we're doing is meeting standards and delivering quality outcomes both across services and for individuals within the services? So there are two different ways of looking at outcome measures. So what is an outcome? What are we talking about? Is it outcomes for the whole of British Columbia, or just Vancouver, or for a home in Vancouver, or for a person in Vancouver? What are we wanting? What are we interested in measuring? So I looked to the dictionary and I looked for a definition of health-related outcomes. And it says a measure of the quality of care, the standard against which the end result of the intervention is assessed. Well, it didn't really help much, did it? So then I went back to the literature, and in fact, actually this came out after we'd started to do the work on outcomes, and it was really helpful. So again, Matt Janicki, who's from the East Coast of America, he's been doing quite a lot of work looking across different international dementia organisations about dementia care, particularly for people with intellectual disabilities. And what he said is that we need a framework for good dementia care quality measurement. And the things that we should be promoting, agencies should be promoting, include early and periodic assessments, physical modifications and living settings, specialised staff education for stage-adapted care, and flexible long-term services that recognise and plan for the progression of decline and change in functioning. So all the things that I've been talking about over the last 2 days, but still didn't give us a framework for actually measuring those. So he talked about you need to measure them, and these are things you need to think about, but not how to do it. So back to my trusty guidance documents that we developed. So what we've done is produced a good practice standards checklist. So that translates what's in the guidelines into standards you should see if the recommendations are being met. And what we did is we identified 15 standards. In the book, and again, if you email me, I'm happy to give you a copy. They're written as outcomes, not inputs. A lot of the standards, a lot of the documents that you see are written as inputs. You will deliver this, rather than outputs, which is the person will experience, or the service will experience. So it's really important. And what we've done in the standards is write them as what would be good, which is green, what would be mediocre, which would be amber, and which would be not meeting the standards at all, which is red. And we can use those to develop your local strategy and your action plan. So let me give you an example. So those are the 15 standards. So this lays out for a whole service what we would be expecting you to be delivering in each of these areas. So you can see it covers all the sorts of things that we've been talking about in the last 2 days. So just to give you an example, this is the standard about assessment and diagnosis. This is standard 6. So it says the standard is people who develop or at risk of developing dementia have easy access to comprehensive assessment and diagnostic services according to an agreed protocol. So that's what we're aspiring to. That's what we want to have in place across services. And we relate it to certain sections of our guidance. So if you're green, if you rate yourself as green, then these are the things that you should have in place to make yourself green. So to be green, you need to have assessments undertaken according to an agreed assessment protocol that includes decisions on whether the service offers baselines, reactive screening and or prospective screening, the things we were talking about earlier today. An agreed assessment battery, so which tests are you going to use, including tests that involve directly assessing the person and those that involve informants. Now, a lot of areas in the UK have just used informant interviews, and we're really clear that actually you're missing a trick if you don't actually directly assess the person. It needs to include physical factors, psychological factors, social factors and environmental factors, as we talked about on, can't remember, yesterday morning I think, I've lost track now. It includes how you have a timely response to referrals so that people aren't waiting a long time. That the diagnosis is multidisciplinary, so it involves more than one profession and based on established criteria, so you can relate it back to something that you can reference to. That it produces a written formulation, so at the end of it you have an assessment that says this is what's happening to the person and I think it's because of these reasons, which may or may not be the dementia. That you have a protocol for sharing the diagnosis with the person and their carers, and that if you identify any other conditions, they are treated promptly. So in the process of your assessment, if you decide that somebody looks like they've got depression, that you make sure that their depression is treated. Or if you find out that they've got pain issues, you get that sorted out. So in order to be rated green, you need to make sure that you're doing all those things. So the bar is quite high. If you rate yourself at amber, then you're rating yourself that there are just a few gaps that require attention and action in order to achieve what we've laid out as a comprehensive service. And if you don't do most of what's laid out in that green, then you need to rate yourself as red. Okay, that there are significant gaps between the best practice standards and your current local procedures. And so if you work through each of those standards, you'll be able to look at how you're doing as a service area and work out where you need to start. What we suggest is that you identify an appropriate stakeholder group. So again, it depends on which part of the service you want to review. If you want to review the services the whole of Vancouver, then your stakeholder group will be very different if you want to review the services that as a service provider you provide. But you need to identify the stakeholder group. You need to decide which standards the team will look at. So ideally, if you're going to do this comprehensively, you do all the standards over a period of time with you might need different stakeholders for different standards. Okay? And we suggest what you're doing, that you hold a review meeting, you identify what you're doing well that meets the standard, you identify what you're not doing that you should be doing, that you do give yourself an overall rating that's honest and true, and that then you think about, okay, so I've rated myself as amber. What do I need to put in place? What do we need to work on over the next period of time to get us to green? Okay, what are the steps we need to put in place? Who else do we need to involve? What are the resources that are necessary? And that way you can begin to tackle parts of the system to actually say that you're producing a really good quality outcome for people. So how are they being used in the UK? So what we're finding is that sometimes a whole system is using them, sometimes it's just specific teams using selected standards. So we've had residential and nursing homes looking at the standards that are very much around the services that they provide, like the environment, like the care they provide. We've had clinical teams looking at the assessment and diagnosis standards and the intervention standards. But both in Sheffield and in Surrey, we've taken the whole document. We've done a stock take of the current services right across either the city or the county. We've identified our strengths and our weaknesses and our gaps. And we've developed a county-wide or a city-wide strategic plan. And that's allowed us then to go to our commissioners and say, work with our commissioners and say, this is where we need to focus on, this is where we need extra resources, this is where we need to develop. And that has helped their commissioning intentions to help us do that. So that's been quite a useful exercise. So before I go on to next, is that something you think that might be useful? Dawn's looking at me with raised eyebrows. You know, people think that might be a useful way of starting. Yes? No?
Yes, because then hopefully it will, I don't know if I should say standardize the care, but we're all going to be working towards the same goal, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Other people? So if you're interested, just email me and I can send you across the document and you'll have it for email to use and download and use. Okay, so that's about whole services. So that's one way of looking at outcomes. But more importantly, but not more important, it's side by side with that, because I think they're both important, is the ability to look at outcomes for people and actually be able to show what you're doing actually makes a difference to the people that we're caring for. So we wanted to develop an equality outcome measure that could be used with anyone with dementia, was stage specific, and that's really interesting. There's a lot, when we reviewed the literature in the general adult dementia, there's quite a lot of different outcome measures. But the problem is that most of them just assume that dementia is a single entity and not changing. And I couldn't get my head round how you could have the same quality outcome at the beginning of dementia and measure it at the end of dementia, because what you're measuring is totally different. So we wanted something that was stage specific. We wanted it to reflect what we had already done in our guidance document. We wanted to be fairly quick to administer, although I have to say it's probably not as quick as we wanted to, but actually it's more detailed. Used in any setting with people, and that not only did it measure outcomes, but also plan to improve it. So if you weren't offering a good outcome, it gave you a way of identifying what you needed to put in place. And we wanted to meet the recommendations that Matt Janicki wrote about in 2011. It was really interesting. Alec Bush and I went to the IACID Europe conference in Rome in October 2010. And I think being in that quite sheltered environment of a conference, when you're really sort of sparking off each other, and we neither of us had come with a pen and a piece of paper. Don't know how you managed to go to a conference without a pen and a piece of paper. And by the end of the conference, every time we went to a different presentation, we'd come back with the back of an envelope or a back of a leaflet, and we'd have a bit more written because we'd sparking off each other. And by the end of 3 days at the conference in Rome, we had the bare bones of this. And it was brilliant to see that actually it came together. So what is the QOMID? QOMID is Quality Outcome Measure for Individuals with Dementia. It contains 17 domains, which we think explore all the key areas to ensure that the person with dementia is experience a really good service and a good quality. It's staged for the 3 main stages of dementia, so suspected or early stage, mid and late. So although the domains are the same for each stage, the description of the quality outcome changes to reflect what needs to change as the dementia progresses. So let me show you some examples. So those are the 17 domains. So again, you can see all the sorts of important things we've talked about over the last 2 days. So what, first of all, you need to do is to decide which stage of dementia the person is currently experiencing. Okay? So you've got to decide, are they in early, suspected or early, mid or late. And in the tool, which I can show you later if anyone's interested, the whole of it, we've given brief descriptions of each of the stages to help you. But hopefully people already had assessments from a professional and they'll tell you, I think this person is in early stage or mid stage. And in the UK, we've got payment by results in some of our services, and so we've linked it to those as well. Who should complete it? At the moment, it's primarily being completed by professionals in discussion with relevant people for each stage of dementia. But I think it's something that even good care staff could probably complete once they've had a couple of goes at it. So what we do, depending on ability, we also talk to the person, how they would rate their experience if they're able to tell us. We get additional information from the family, from support workers, from staff, some advocates. Anyone else who's involved with the person contributes to actually deciding what's happening for that person. And what we ask is that you actually write down your evidence for your decision. So you can't just say, I think this is good or not so good. You actually have to write down your evidence for it. So let me take you through a couple of the domains. So this one is domain 1. This says that the person, the area it's assessing is person-centered approaches to support. And what you can see is actually, for each of the 3 domains, 3 stages, the detail is exactly the same, because that doesn't change depending on the stage of dementia you're in. We still want the person experiencing support underpinned by planning, which is based on their own wishes, their capacity, their needs and their history, and which includes all the things we've talked about having good plans, good healthcare plans, communication passports, life story work, etc., etc. So you can see that it doesn't matter which stage of dementia you're in, we expect that to be in place regardless. If I take you to a different domain, this one is about orientation. So you can see here that the domains are very different. So the stages is very different from what we're expecting about orientation. So in early stage, what we want is the person is oriented to time and place through approaches that are appropriate to their level of ability. Their support plan describes routines that are likely to be important to the person as the dementia progresses. There is evidence the team has made plans to ensure that any future changes that are envisaged for the person are properly considered and take account of the possible effect on the person's orientation. So if you're going to think about moving their day service or their home, have you thought about what that might mean in terms of the person being oriented in time and place? Once people move to mid-stage, it changes. So the person is able to understand their daily routine through the use of appropriate cues and aids. And we give some suggestions, e.g. daily picture timetables, picture menus, picture staff rotas. Those things that help to keep people anchored and oriented. And again, there's evidence that you've considered any future changes. But by late stage, what we want for the person is that they feel safe in having a consistent and familiar routine. Okay? So by that stage of the dementia, the pictures and those sorts of things are probably not going to be as useful as they were, but you just want people to feel secure and safe in the care that they're getting through consistency. Does that make sense? And then another one, so this one's about the environment. So for early stage, this is the sort of bluey purple, or always that colour. The person lives and spends their time in environments that are familiar to them and that they can find their way around easily with depth perception problems minimised. So we didn't talk very much about depth perception yesterday, but we know that one of the first signs of dementia in people with Down syndrome is that inability to cope with changes in steps, stairs, carpets like this, thresholds. And you see people wobbling across changes in thresholds because they don't know how far down. So flooring is consistent, for example. At mid-stage, we want people to live and spend their time in environments that are familiar to them and have all the necessary aids and adaptations to help them find their way around and meet their needs and minimises risks of falls, because we know falls is a great issue. So that's things like the red toilet seats, toilet doors, toilet seats, good colour contrast, good signage, handrails, chairs at the right height, all those sorts of things that we talked about yesterday. And then at late stage, it changes again, so that the person lives and spends their time in environments that are familiar to them and have all the necessary adaptations to meet their needs. So this is the time for all those specialist things you need. So the hoists, maybe the adapted baths or showers, the special profiling beds, appropriate wheelchairs and armchairs, good changing facilities. Okay? So you can see how the outcome is different for these domains depending on the stage dementia. Okay, so how do you score? So what, as I said before, you decide what stage of dementia currently falls into, and you follow that column all the way down, so you ignore the other two. Okay, so you're just looking at one column, and you, for each of that column, you rate, and after you've had your discussion with everybody involved, you need to be really honest and rate each domain using the following rating scale. So it's a 1 to 4 rating scale, where 1 is that this is rarely achieved for the person, through to 4, where it's completely and consistently achieved for the person. And it's important that it is the consistently. Okay? So what you do for each domain, you circle the rating at the current time, you should commit all the domains, and you record the evidence you've used to make the rating. So if you're talking about environment, then I'd want a list of the changes you've made to the environment for that domain. Okay? For that stage of dementia, for example. And then if the person has scored, if you've rated the domain less than 4, then you need to specify what you need to then work on to improve the person's quality outcome in that area of their life. So you're using it both as an outcome measure and as a plan and a care planning tool. So it has both uses for people. So what are we aiming for? We're aiming that people score 4 in the stages of the dementia they're at for each of those domains. We know that dementia is a progressive condition, and we know that what often happens is that the care lags behind the stages in the person's progression of the disease, that the care is always playing catch up. And this is a way of hopefully trying to stop that catch up. So that means that as people move through the stage of the dementia, the quality outcome score might not be 4s, it might be 2s and 3s. But you can work, hopefully, unless the person is changing really, really quickly, it gives you the time to work through the changes to get you to 4s in that domain, in each of the domains, before you go through onto the next stage of dementia. So the scores might fluctuate during the course of the dementia as you use the tool, as the care plays catch up with the changing needs. But you're forever working towards getting to 4s on all areas. So this is a scoring sheet, so you write the score down. Here, you write in your evidence, and then if that wasn't a 4 there, then I would expect this box to be completed to say, actually, what are we going to do about this? Okay? And then we've just added them up and said, excellence is between 60 and 68, etc., etc. There's no scientific methodology to that at all. And then hopefully you can also use it to forward plan, because you can look ahead and see what actions needed to be completed, and you can also begin to look at the descriptions for the next stage of dementia to think about, okay, I think he's about to move, he's progressing, what do I need to think about and have in place as the dementia progresses? So it's got a lot of good uses for staff. And again, we have some summary sheets you can use. We've done a lot of work on validating it. So we're validating it in our services started off in Surrey and Sheffield, and then we took some more services. We've used it with 73 people. Most people, oops, didn't mean to do that. Most people said it was fairly easy to use and easy to understand. We wondered about whether people would find it easy to assign which level of dementia people are at. People didn't have a problem. We've used it both in learning disability and intellectual disability services and in older people's services, and there was no significant difference in how people used it or the ease of use. And the mean time to administer was between half an hour and 3/4 of an hour. But actually, people have used it, some people have been very quick, and some people have taken hours over it and really gone into it in a lot of depth. It depends on their service. We had some lovely unsolicited feedback, which I'll let you read.
How often would you recommend the assessment?
I think it depends on how often people are changing. So I think as a minimum, I would want to see it done every 3 to 6 months. But if someone's changing quicker, you might want to come in sooner and do that. There is a question I'm going to show you, there's probably at the end. We've used it in a whole variety of ways. We started to use it just at reviews, but we've now started to use it as part of our assessment process. So we do it when we assess to see where people are at in their dementia, and then we'll talk to the staff, we'll write it up as part of the formal assessment process. So it actually informs their care plan. And then we might go in and review it at 3-month intervals after that, because we wouldn't assess as often as 3 months. Depends on the person, depends on how quickly they're deteriorating, depends on a lot of things really. If they're in a really excellent service, we probably might not go in as much, because we know they're getting a really good service anyway. It's really helpful with those services who think they're good, and you know they're not. You can go in and try and do it objectively with them and independently with them. So the best way of doing this is to give you a go. So what I've got, and I hope this works now, is I've got a clip of a video. So I'm going to show you a brief clip of an example for care. It's from the supporting Derek pack that I talked about earlier. We are going to assume that the person in the DVD has mid-stage dementia. Okay? So I want you to watch the clip. It's about 6.5 minutes long. You're going to have to listen very carefully because it was filmed in Scotland. So you're going to have to attune yourself to quite a broad accent. And then I'm going to ask you to rate the person's quality outcome using some of the domains on the Quomid, and I'll give you the sheets to do that afterwards. And I'm going to ask you to think about 6 areas. So one sec, can I just take them through this? So person-centered approaches to support, the interaction with others that you see, the emotional reassurance to cope with the changes you're seeing, orientation, daily living and environment, okay? So we're going to look at 6 domains and I'll get you to do it in little groups. So first of all, we're going to try and watch the DVD. Okay, now it's very loud, but it needs to be loud. It has to be loud. Thank you.
bit cold outside.
No, I'm going to stay well.
No, you live here now.
No, I get out of line.
No, come on, I've got your lunch ready.
Liar!
No, Derek, come on, your lunch is ready. Come on, Derek, come on, I've got your lunch ready. Come on then. That's a good lad. Come on, this is where you stay. Okay? This is your home. That's good. In you come. That's you. Right? Come on. You sit down here. Right, I'll pull this chair out for you. Right, you sit down. Right? Fantastic. Right, wait a minute. That's grand. Right, okay? You quite comfy?
Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to go and get your lunch, okay? Because it's ready, alright? Okay. Right, guys. Macaroni, okay?
Yeah.
That's what you're having the day. That's what you asked for, wasn't it?
Aye.
Right, okay. Derek, I'll put yours right just now.
If you try.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's sticking, so it is. There you are. Oh, it isn't half. It's well stuck, isn't it?
Aye.
Right. Peter, is that enough for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
But
you
you
so
do want
much.
any more, Derek?
If you try.
Just another wee bit?
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's fine. Are you sure that's enough?
I don't know.
You sure?
Yeah.
Derek, what are you doing?
What are you doing? No, you've not to do that. That's wrong. What are you doing? No. I'm going to get very cross with you if you don't stop that.
That's not yours. You've got yours on your plate.
I've already told you not to touch anything that doesn't belong to you. Do you understand?
Yes, yeah.
No more.
What are you doing down there, Derek? Come on, Derek, come on, come on, I know Peter shouted at you, but come on. You're in the wrong, you shouldn't have took his food. Come on, right, that's it. Come on. No, wait a minute, just take your time, it's okay, I'll get in the end. Wait a minute.
Hey.
No, because you're in a state, you're getting yourself all upset.
Aye.
Right, just round this corner, come on, that's it. Derek, you missed your drink, come on, this is it here.
No!
Right?
There's a man there!
No, come on, you're seeing things, not again. There's no man in here.
Man there!
You're seeing things again.
I'm Derek.
What is it, Derek? What do you see?
My dad.
It's only you, Derek.
I am younger. I am.
I'm going to give you the descriptions for those 6 domains and a score sheet. And in your tables, I want you to have a discussion and decide how you're going to score Derek and the care that he's getting on each of those 6 domains, so you can see in practice what it feels like to do it. Okay? So you might want to come and join up. Go over here. Okay, so you're looking at the middle, the pinky, orangey, that one, colour, because he's got mid-stage dementia. Okay? So what I want you to do is read the description, think about what you saw on the DVD, and should decide whether you're going to score it 1, 2, 3 or 4. So if you think they're completely and consistently meeting that in each of the areas, you'll give it a 4. If you think maybe it's mostly achieved, you'll give it a 3. Sometimes is a 2 and rarely is a 1. And you need to write down your evidence for why you're rating it as it is. And if it isn't a 4, you need to make some suggestions about what they could do to improve it. So I'm going to give you and second page. Starting with number 7, orientation.
Teachers make plans to ensure that future changes are envisaged for the person. Probably considered and take into account the possible effects of the person's orientation. Well, that wasn't at all, was it?
So let's go through each domain one at a time, and the tables who haven't completed them yet, you're happy to chip in. So let's talk primarily these 2 tables at the back first for the first 1, 5 and 6. So first of all, person-centered approaches to support. First of all, what rating did you give that?
We gave it a 1.
You gave it a 1.
If we give it less,
And the table at the back? You gave it a 1. Did either of you get as far as doing that one? No. So we weren't happy. So what was our evidence for giving it a 1? What did you see in that DVD that you didn't like?
well, she never asked any questions of him. She only gave him verbal cues. And you could tell from the beginning, which was the whole point, it was overstimulated. It didn't take into account where he was at his stage of dementia. You didn't see a storybook, which would have been great, so you could have some background on him.
So we didn't see anything person-centered. Anything else to add from the table at the back? At person-centered?
That he was jumpy and kind of agitated quite a bit, and that there were not choices offered, and that there were questions, but they were open-ended questions.
Okay.
And that, so it wasn't really, turn down the TV and say, come with me and that here what we're going to do. Or like you were saying before about offering a towel instead of a picture of a bath or whatever, like actually bring the plate to him, and then he might just come to the table.
Okay.
There's no opportunities for him to maintain any of his current skill level.
No.
She did everything for him.
Yeah, so she didn't ask him to come and help set the table or anything that he could have done to help prepare for the meal.
Yep.
I think she asked him questions, but she didn't wait for him to respond. It was now moving along really, really quickly for him.
Yeah, so she was using far too much language for him to process, wasn't she? So she wasn't being person-centered in that way, because he wasn't given a chance to think through and give a response. She was just talking at him all the time.
Can you tell us if she was a mother or a caregiver?
She's an actress.
What was she supposed to be?
Caregiver.
Have you
Okay.
seen
Caregiver.
the Supreme Gary?
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Questions.
Yeah.
That I thought with people with dementia, you need to avoid open-ended
You
questions,
do.
correct? So it is really, the question should be something that people can answer with yes or no.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Avoid questions because it just causes confusion. What am I meant to say? Okay. So we didn't see any evidence of anything about his own wishes, although she did say it's macaroni cheese, that's what you asked for. So that was a slight maybe that they discussed the menu earlier in the day. We didn't see any evidence that she was maximising his decision making at any time. We didn't know that there was any evidence that we used any sort of plans to actually progress his care. So lots of things needed to happen. Obviously some of the things wouldn't be things you could show in a DVD. Okay, so let's go on to number 5, interaction with others. So the table at the back, what did you score that as?
2.
Ooh, you're generous.
Well, we're thinking 1.5 and
And the table at the front?
We did it as a 1.
You did it as a 1. Okay. So table at the back, do you want to take us through why you gave him a 2?
Because we saw some gentle moments where she was making attempts where she did physically touch him on the shoulder and kind of redirected him back and that kind of thing. And so we saw that as maybe sometimes happens.
Okay. And the things that you were worried about seeing?
Well, everybody was ordering him around. Between the two people, they were both ordering him. Then the open-ended questions again, and what else do you guys got?
The rollback in the mirror when he's
rollback,
looking
the
and seeing
rollback.
his father in the mirror.
Yeah. So when he was looking in the mirror, that couldn't possibly have been Derek in the mirror because with his rollback memory, he wasn't that old. So when he's in the bathroom and he sees his younger self, that's what he wants to. That's what he thinks he is. He's not that old man in the mirror. That must be his dad. Now some people might find that quite reassuring, that they're seeing their dad, and other people might find that quite scary. It depends on your relationship with your dad. Okay?
Yeah.
But she didn't give him any reassurance that it was okay. So again, we can see that she wasn't helping him to understand. And we know that the two most common words that people with dementia say when they get to mid-stage is mother and home. And again, he was talking about not feeling comfortable there, wanting to go home, wanting to go and see his mum.
Yeah.
And again, she didn't give him any interaction. There was no positive interaction about why would you like to see your mum, what would you like from your mum, are you missing your mum, anything that might have helped to reassure him. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add about his interactions?
Pretty much they said the same things, and we were already talking about rollback memories. And it comes back to even like what I said at the beginning, which is more visual cues, eye contact, eliminate distraction, being more observant. We found that the individual that was with him was more observant of the fact that things were bothering him than the staff that was actually with him.
Yeah, so Peter, even though he was another person with a learning disability, could clearly see that Derek was upset.
And there was no support of that interaction between the two.
No. No. And she, and again, the carer Teresa didn't step in when Peter started to shout at Derek. She didn't step in at all, did she, to support Derek and say, well, or just to help Peter say, actually, Derek couldn't help that. So just as a matter of interest, because it's probably not here in these 6 here, why did Derek go and take Peter's food, not his own?
Couldn't pick up his fork,
Couldn't pick up his fork or spoon.
Depth perception, maybe?
Maybe depth perception, all those colours on the plates, the coloured plate, the coloured tablecloth, the patterned serviette.
I think he needed an eye test. Maybe his glasses weren't working.
Might be an eye test.
Maybe Peter's was, because he was already using it, supplies contrast.
Could be, but I think it was purely that he was being cued in by Peter. So Teresa hadn't gone into him and went to him as I would have done, go, Derek, put some on his fork and go, here we are, Derek. So all he was doing was watching what Peter was doing to get a cue. And so as Peter picked up the pasta, he had to pick up Peter's pasta, and of course then he got screamed at, didn't he? So poor Derek didn't have a chance, really. Okay, so what sorts of things might we suggest needs to happen to improve his interaction with others?
Visual cues.
Visual cues.
And then also just being more observant of, as a carer, that's my job, honestly. It's not just caring for people, but it's also being observant as to what's going on around them. Okay. I have to think further ahead to what can affect them and how it's going to affect them. And that's regardless of whether you have dementia or not.
Okay.
We had training for staff or for the person.
Absolutely, so talking to Peter about what's happening, as well as training for the staff. Again, making sure that when she does come towards Derek, she should come around to the front of him, not to the side or the back of him. She should come down to his level and talk to him, rather than just calling him across.
Covering the mirror.
Covering the mirror. Mirror is probably more to do with the environment, interaction with others, but actually being reassuring in the way she talked to him. Because she was quite cross with him a lot of the time, wasn't she? She was really quite cross with him quite a lot of the time, oh Peter, oh sorry, oh Derek, you've done, here you go again, that rolling eyes sort of tone of voice wasn't good, was it?
Well, she listed him off the floor too, that was
yes.
And you want to take away the distractions, the loud TV,
absolutely.
Spending less time with Peter.
Towards the job rather than the needs of the
so she was task oriented, not oriented. Okay, good. Number 6, emotional reassurance to cope with the changes. So this table, what did you score him?
Again, it was a 1.
You were a 1.
We didn't. We skipped over because we thought we might only get 1 more done, and we thought they might be in the same boat, so we skipped.
Right, okay. So other people, what do we think about emotional reassurance to cope with the changes? Wasn't happening, so it's a 1. Okay? So what didn't we see? What did we see that we didn't like?
Well, her contradicting him when he saw himself in the mirror. Like, you don't tell somebody that that's them. They're saying it's not. you meet them where they're at. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
So that's your time. You're right. Or you want to go home, as you said. Why does anyone go home? Or what do your mom normally do? Like, you make it into a conversation and to their story for that moment.
Okay. When he went into his bedroom, what was going on then?
He was fearful. He didn't want to do it.
That's
What
not
was he
my room.
seeing?
That's not my room.
That's not really his room because
Nothing was familiar.
nothing familiar. But who was he seeing in the mirror? What did he say?
His father.
No.
So he was younger.
No, not in his bedroom. He said, "There's a man in my room. Get him out. There's a man in my room." So what I presume is happening is there was a mirror,
There's a mirror there.
and he's seeing himself. But of course, he doesn't recognise that at that point he's himself. And of course, as he gets more agitated, what happens to the image in the mirror? It gets more agitated. So you can see how those sorts of things escalate. So, you know, he's attacking me now. He's attacking me now. If you've got someone who's got nighttime problems, then the first thing you do is you go and look at their room from their level. So you're not with them in their bed, obviously when they're not in their room, but you need to go in and be as if they are you are them in their room, and see what you can see, because what you see standing up is very different to what you might see at bed level or looking down. So you really need to focus on what you're seeing, what the person is seeing. So whereas a mirror might be all right in the bathroom, when you actually got to shave or brush your teeth and you need to look at what you're doing, a mirror in your bedroom at night time can be really scary for people. Again, don't remove the mirror, but cover it. So we use roller blinds. And you can just buy little roller blinds and pull it down and up when you need it, those sorts of things. Okay, so he hasn't done very well on the first three. Let's go to the other three. So orientation. What did you score him on this table for orientation? 1. And the other table?
We did a 1 or a 1 to 2.
You're being generous.
Oh, I wasn't.
Okay, so what did you see or not see? What was the evidence for giving him a 1?
No evidence of a visual schedule, no visual prompts used to help bring him through his routine.
Okay. So there's no cues or clues around to actually help him at all to know what to do next. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he got a bit higher because she did say it was lunch, and he maybe smelled the food. And
Would she have smelled the food because the food wasn't in the lounge? She would have heard the clatter of the crockery,
yes,
which was frightening for him because the telly was on full blast, wasn't it? And the phone was ringing, and she was speaking to someone on the phone.
And she did set the table.
She did set the table, but she didn't involve him in setting the table. Right. So,
it's not good.
Not good. Okay. So what could we do better?
Well, I thought personally that Teresa, she seemed like quite a nice person. You know, she didn't seem abusive or anything like that. But I don't think she'd done any specific dementia training.
Right.
So that was what I thought. She probably had some kind of care training, but not specific for dementia.
Okay. So what are we going to introduce? Quiet training.
Quiet environment.
Quiet environment.
Turn off the TV.
Turn off the TV. So again, it may be that different people have headphones, so they watch everyone else doesn't have to listen to the TV just because it's on.
No visual clues that it's lunchtime.
No clues to it's lunchtime. So there wasn't a menu on the board. He hadn't been asked to come and help set the table or help collect the food in if he was capable of.
Make a nice clear table. He has his own placemat, his own spot.
Yeah. So we've got lots of things. Anything else on this table you'd like to see?
We added contrasting colors, so like the utensils being bright colored and the cup.
All right, good.
More nutritious food.
Better food as well. It was pretty disgusting. Every time I see this video, I just cringe. And she wasn't paying attention. I don't know if you heard, because the sound quality is, I've used that video too many times, I think. As she was dishing out more, and she kept asking him if that was enough, he had a little Scottish phrase that she ignored completely. Did you hear that? No. He said, "if you say." So that was his way of showing he was acquiescing, but without really any understanding. It was obviously a little learned phrase, if you say so.
It's like whatever, right?
Well, yeah, whatever. So he wasn't really saying, I want some more of this gloopy stuff that you're throwing on my plate. But actually he didn't know what else to say to, huh? daily living. What did you score on daily living? A 1? So you're a 1?
Because there was no 0.
Because there was no 0. Okay. So, was he able to complete any parts of his personal care and daily living tasks? Not that we saw evidence of in the DVD. So he wasn't encouraged to come and help set the table. He wasn't encouraged to help get the food in or anything. He was just a recipient of care, wasn't he, completely?
He was able to put his coat and his hat on, though.
Sorry?
He was able to put his coat and
He
his
was
hat
able to put his coat and his hat on, but he wasn't. She didn't help him to take his coat and his hat off when he came back to the table. So he's sitting at the table, eating his lunch with his coat on, isn't it? Not good care. So what else would we like to? What would we like to have in place for him?
Specific assistance, not to be provided as an assistance here.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so we need a support plan that says what he needs to be able to do, what he's able to do himself. So he might be able to get the cutlery out the drawer, he might not be able to put it on the table because he might not remember, but that's fine. He might be able to get the cups out, but maybe not put them in the right place, but does it matter? So he can do parts of the task and then maybe be supported to do other parts of the task. And lots of praise, lots of well done, that's great stuff, Derek. So he makes you feel good about himself and that he feels useful part of the home and the community that he lives in. Okay, last but not least, environment.
This was a disaster.
It was a disaster. So what was the disaster about the environment? Carpets. What was wrong with the carpets? Lovely carpet. What was wrong with the carpets?
It was busy.
Very, very patterned. And what they were trying to show, it was very difficult to show in the DVD, is that when people see all those different colours, they look as if they're different heights.
Yeah.
The person with dementia, so they actually look as if they're little mountains to climb over. And it's really interesting. Many, many years ago, Diana and I were at a conference in some god-awful part of the UK, and it was a big room, like much bigger room than this, and then a horrific hotel carpet. And we had to walk across the carpet to form groups. And people, this carpet was sort of like moving, it looked like it was. And people were tripping over their feet, they didn't have dementia, because this carpet was so highly patterned, you couldn't work out where. So if that's what happens when you don't have dementia, imagine what it must be like when you have dementia and this thing looks like it's undulating up and down. Okay? So you've got to be really careful about patterns.
He jumped from the carpeted area onto the floor.
Yeah, so when you went out from the lounge into the hallway, you suddenly got a different texture of flooring with a door bar. So again, what would that look like to the person? A step, okay? So quite often you'll see people with dementia, when they get to a door threshold, say this was the door, they'll be holding their hands on the door jambs and trying to, you'll see them going like this, trying to step over, because they can't, their brains, that bit of your brain that understands depth perception gets lost and goes, and then they can't understand where they're going. Okay, so we've got problems with the carpet and the flooring.
What about the rug in the hall?
The rug in the hall is always dangerous because again, it looks like it's different colours to the rest, so do I step over it? It's a slip hazard or a trip hazard. Okay, what else do we see?
There was no picture of him on his door and it was way too high.
Okay, so it was way too high, so when we talked about yesterday about people with Down syndrome, well, people with dementia full stop, they tend to shrink or they tend to look down as they walk past. It was up here. It only said his name, so it presumed that you'd have to be able to read, and we don't know if Derek could read.
And it was white.
And it was white on white.
Yeah, everything.
So what sorts of things might we put on the door to make him know it was his door?
A picture of himself.
Okay, so a picture of himself when? Younger. So remember that if you're going to use pictures of him, you're going to need to work out where he is in his rollback memory to work out what picture to use. So a picture that you use today, in 6 months' time, he may not recognise again, because if his memory is rolling back, he might think that can't be me because I'm not that old. So pictures of himself, you need to think about carefully whether he can still recognise. If you don't use pictures of himself, what else could you use?
Keepsake.
You could use something, yeah, say something that's important to him. We've used all sorts of things. So we had a lady who was a soccer fan, a particular football club in London, Tottenham Hotspur. So she had a football shirt on her door. We've had people with Daleks and Doctor Who stuff on their door, or Elvis Presley on their door, or anything that makes it think, this is my room, this is my space, this is where I belong. Okay? What else do we see about the environment?
The bathroom was all white.
The bathroom was all white. So again, we talked yesterday about coloured doors, coloured toilet seats, covering the mirror. Okay?
It was leaning on the heater, I believe, in the hallway. I don't know if it was hot or not.
It was leaning on
a heater, I believe.
A radiator, yeah. So that would look dangerous, didn't it? And also, I mean, you can't probably do much about it, but he was stuck down the end of the corridor.
And he was on the floor.
He was on the floor.
They just reefed him up. They didn't check if anything had happened to him.
No. But actually, you know, dead-end corridors are not good for people with dementia because they get themselves down. Particularly because there was a light at the end. It was a door or a window or something at the end. So that attracts people. Oh, I must go and see what's down there. And then you get there and they go, I don't know what to do now. Oh, I'll just drop. And they flopped on the floor. So people to lose that ability to turn themselves round. So you get stuck in dead ends sometimes.
It seemed like he had a stomach ache before lunch.
Yeah. So obviously again they weren't paying attention to whether he's got any health issues. When he was before lunch, what was the chair he was sitting on like? Okay, so the chair was the wrong size for him because his feet weren't on the floor. So again, if he needed to go to the toilet in a hurry, he's going to have a lot of problems, isn't he? People with Down syndrome on the whole are littler, so their feet are not on the floor. So they tend to sit back. They often sit. I can't do it. They often sit cross-legged because their feet are on the floor. They sit. I can't do it. Cross-legged on the chair.
Because my feet don't touch the floor.
But cross-legged, almost lotus position. People with Down syndrome to balance themselves because they can't reach the floor. So if you suddenly decide I need the toilet, what have you got to do? So first of all, you've got to shimmy your body forward to get your feet flat on the floor. Then hopefully if you've got a chair with sides, which you always should have, otherwise you've got to get yourself up. Oops. And then you've got to, from that lounge, there was nothing obvious about where the toilet was. So then you've got to get to reorientate yourself and think, where do I go next? Now from that lounge, there was no signage, there was nothing to indicate where the loo is. So again, the chances are, if Peter did have tummy ache and need to go to the loo, he wouldn't have got there in time because there was no way of him knowing where it was. Okay? Anything else we saw?
The table.
The table. Oh, well, the table was a disaster, wasn't it? That patterned tablecloth, the patterned napkin, the revolting plate. Sorry. It's not good dementia care, is it? So again, we need to think about colour contrasts, so plain plates, different colour table mat, plain... Second?
I just think everything was so busy that they were from the most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He didn't stand a chance, poor man, did he?
The size of the table also, and where people were eating, they were close together, which like heightened that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, so because there was only two of them, they were squashed up on end. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've got lots and lots of... So you can see, even though we've done this on 6 minutes of DVD, and just 6 of the domains, we have picked out a huge amount of things that we could to make better for Derek, to make his life better. Now, I'm not going to show you the rest of the video because we haven't got time, but if you ever buy a supporting Derek pack, it's really good to use in staff training because the other 20 minutes of the video gives you the explanations of all the things we've talked about. So it's a really, really useful resource to use in staff training. So I use it in the same way we've been using it. Show the first 6 minutes, have a discussion about all that's wrong, and then show them the rest. So I do recommend it to you. It's a really good tool. Right. What I want to do, just to finish really, is just to give you a real life example of how we've used the QOMID in practice. So I'm going to call him James, but I'll probably end up calling him his real name. I'm not very good at this, trying to be an anonymity lark. So James is a 58-year-old man with Down syndrome who was in mid-stage dementia when we started using the QOMID with him. In fact, he's moved since then. He lived in a 6-bedded residential home, which was a complex of 4 homes, which had been going through some difficult stages and difficult times. We'd done a lot of work with the home and with the manager, and they decided this particular house would be a specialist learning disability and dementia home. So we'd been in and done lots of work with the staff, we'd done staff training, we'd looked at the environment, we was getting better. So in March 2013, we decided to try using it for the first time with James, with his brother, his sister, his brother-in-law, and the staff from the service. And overall, they gave him a score of 57, which was a good. So these are the domains where we didn't score a 4. So the other ones we did. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that we needed to put in place. So he didn't have a life story book. So what we agreed is that my assistant psychologist would work with the family and with the staff to give them a format to help start them off on doing his life story book. We were concerned about consistency of approach. Although it was quite a small staff team, once we started talking, what we discovered was that each member of the team was doing things differently, particularly around his morning and his evening routine. So when people got him up in the morning, they were doing things in different orders for him. So what we agreed is that they would develop guidelines for his morning and evening routine based on what James liked to do, not what the staff liked to do, and that they would be stuck on the inside of his wardrobe door, so they were there when they needed them, but they also preserved his dignity. So it wasn't about being kept in the office so people would never look at them. They were there and available for people to look at. He scored low on orientation because although they'd started to do some things with the environment, they weren't using pictures nearly enough, and the pictures that they were using were tiny and far too high on the wall. So we talked a lot about more picture cues being needed. So we needed a larger staff picture board. He needed his own individual daily timetable, only showing one day at a time. Often people do a daily timetable and have all 7 days, then people don't know which day to pick. He needed a picture menu for choosing his foods at breakfast, lunch and supper. And he particularly needed pictures for events and shopping. He was the gentleman, for those who've been in one of my earlier sessions, that we had the problem with the shoes and going shopping. They weren't using pictures. We then had, he got a 3 for carrying out preferred activities. This bit caused us the most consternation in the whole event, because I tried to talk to the brother and the sister, and I thought I'd made myself, I was trying to be clear, and said, right, tell me what sorts of things that James used to do when he lived at home as a small boy. What were the sort of preferred activities that you as a family did? I thought that was fairly open and honest. And his brother Mark got up suddenly, banging the table. Went, what do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, what were the things you liked to do as a family when James... We do the same things as all other families. I know that. I'm not suggesting that you did anything weird or peculiar or abusive. I'm just saying that different families like doing different things. You know, my family might have liked doing particular games. Your family might like do different things outside. Just tell me what you did. Oh, God. Anyway, we finally calmed him down. And what it turns out to be is that they used to play a game called Shove-Halfpenny, which involved a board with segments on it, and you had to get a coin and push it. And the further down the board you got a score. And apparently James was the family absolutely star at playing Shove-Halfpenny. And it ended up that, so I started to go to the staff, well, you could make a Shove-Halfpenny board, and the staff would look at me going, yeah, right, Karen. And in fact, Mark, the brother, turned, it's all right, I'll make you one, and I'll come in and train all the staff. So once we calmed him down from this tirade of, why is my family different from all other families, he did actually make this Shove-Halfpenny board, and he came in and trained all the staff so they could play Shove-Halfpenny with James, which I thought was brilliant. We worked out he liked outings to the seaside, so Bognor and Wittering are 2 seaside resorts, and he used to go putting, which is like mini golf, again at the seaside. So again, we'd said that they needed to buy a putting set for the garden for the home. Again, we'd started to do some work on environment, but it wasn't complete. So again, we put together a fuller program of environmental modifications. So to get the red toilet seats, to get the signs at the right height, all those sorts of things. We felt these health needs were on the whole being met, but that they weren't perhaps best at trying to work out if James was showing any signs of pain or distress. So we suggested using an instrument called the DISTAT. Don't know if you've heard of that. The Disability Distress Assessment Tool, I think it's that. But it looks at non-verbal ways that people look at pain and distress, and it's quite useful to get staff to think about which ways people observe, they can observe people. And then looking at Department of Health guidance about vitamin D, that people need 20 minutes of sunlight every day. We were suggesting that actually they needed to make sure that he was out in the sun, or at least in the bright skies, even if it wasn't sunny, as much as we could. We knew about the shoes, so again they needed to be checked regularly and the staff to check his walking. And then the other area that needed the most work was about the mattress and his continence. So we needed a new mattress on his bed because it was stained and soiled. He needed to sort out the right sort of continence pads, so pull-ups during the night and flexi-tabs, pull-ups during the day, so allow him to be able to change them, flexi-tabs at night. People make sure that he had a good toileting program, and we asked one of our community nurses to come in, start the toileting program and a monitoring chart, and to follow up with the different sorts of continence products and the funding for those, because we were asking for more expensive ones that normally get prescribed on the NHS. So you can see again, 45 minutes with the family, we come up with some other ways of trying to support James. He was getting fairly good care, but those were ways what you could go to then improve that. We then went on to review it in a few months' time, and again, constantly using the process of updating every time we got together. As I say, we've tried different ways of using it. We've used it as part of assessments, we've completed it in reviews, and then we review at the next review. So it's an ongoing iteration of the same needs. It's finally been accepted for publication as an article, and it's going to appear at the end of the year in Advances in Mental Health and Intellectual Disabilities. We've presented at a whole variety of conferences, and it's really now beginning to be taken up both in the UK, but also I had an email from someone in Texas last week before I came out saying, can we use it over there? Yeah, greatly. So the more people that use it, hopefully the better outcomes. What we have got is, if you use it, we've got a web-based SurveyMonkey link. It's an online questionnaire thing, so that we can try and collect anonymised data, so we can actually do some more analysis on its usefulness. So it's a free tool, but we just ask you to send us data back. And that's it. Are there any other questions? Do people find that useful? Yeah? Any questions? Any thoughts? Blinded you all into silence. Something you think you might use in practice? Yeah? So again, if you want a copy of it, email me. It'll be winging its way back when I get back to the UK on Thursday. Okay? Thank you very much.